Hey everyone, my name is Buffy. I am a women's lifestyle creator on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. I currently have a podcast called Recovering Perfectionist Mama, Grace in Progress. Deals with family roles. If you've been assigned a family role, if you're not sure what role you are, stay tuned because we will be dropping a test that can actually let you know about the two roles. One is a primary and then one would be a secondary, a non-gameable test to give you the actual real results that you may actually be looking for and wanting to know more about. I also am an almost 18-year criminal defense attorney. And so I have another podcast called Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion. And that talks about legal analysis on cases that you might be familiar with, such as Casey Anthony, Susan Smith, Darley, Scott Peterson, as well as some older cases such as Charles Ross, the chessboard murders, the Zodiac, and some of the other cases like Richard Ramirez, Eileen Wuornos, John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy. And so if you're interested in true crime cases, there you go. If there's other topics that you might be interested in the criminal justice system. So guys, welcome. My name is Buffy. For those of you that don't know me, I am a women's lifestyle creator on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, covering topics such as family roles. We will be releasing a role test. Hello. Hello, King. Hello, Seb. We will be releasing that if you guys don't know what role you are in your family. Welcome, Tank. So today we're actually talking about perfectionism is a coping mechanism, not a personality trait, because it's been with us for so long. And so it can almost feel like it belongs to us, like it's part of who we are. Thank you for the like. I'm doing well. How are you? Good to see everybody here. Welcome. So yeah, if you want to check out later on, like the Grace and Gavel, which is a true crime podcast, I'm an almost 18-year criminal defense attorney, feel free. Or if you're looking more for family roles, fake niceness, things like that, more of a psychological channel, check out Recovering Perfectionist Mama, Grace in Progress. So if you've always thought you were a perfectionist, there's a good chance that's not your personality. It's something you learned. And ultimately, it's most likely a coping mechanism to avoid dealing with how difficult things can be sometimes. You're perfectionist that where you don't want to run afoul of anyone, you don't want to deal with any conflict, any trauma, right? And you're not going to have to worry about answering why you did X, why you did Y, or having someone jump on you or get in conflict with you. So the other thing about it too is perfectionism actually disrupts your identity. It makes you someone that you're not necessarily you are. I mean, it kind of is part of you ultimately, but it's not it's not part of a personality trait. It's almost a coping mechanism, something that you learned and developed to be able to keep yourself safe, keep yourself without blemish or feeling like you need to answer to other people, right? So you think that if you completely follow the rules, that everything will be okay. People will actually be able to kind of get you to get along with people. So the other thing too is you weren't born this way, right? You became this way based on circumstances that you may have experienced. Maybe that was trauma. Maybe that was, you had a parent who was overly critical or someone in your life who kept telling you that you weren't doing what you needed to be doing, that you should be better, that you should be stronger, you should be smarter, you should be any number of things, right? And so that can kind of impact your identity and make you feel self-conscious and then decide, you know what, I don't like feeling that. What I need to be doing. I'm being better. I'm leveling up. But yet the thing that you realize is perfectionism is a trap, right? Once it sinks its teeth into you, then that's where it's at, right? You continue to want to do more and more and more and more and more. You want to be better. You want to be stronger. You want to just keep pushing yourself harder and harder and harder. And I myself, as a perfectionist, hence why my username is Recovering Perfectionist Mama, is because I pushed myself so hard and it seemed like it was never good enough. And I think that that's a trap. You think that you have the ability to be perfect. You have the ability to level up and do the things that you want to do, but you're perfection. It's so difficult to live by that, right? And here's where it starts ultimately. It starts with pressure. It starts with pressure from someone, some outside pressure that makes you doubt yourself. Like maybe at one point you were confident, but then somebody started to kind of filter into your thoughts or your inner critic here, which definitely probably has a well-worn pathway as a perfectionist. I know that sometimes my inner critic gets really nasty about things, and you start thinking about that and ruminating on that. Like, how can I change this? And then you deal with the shame cycle because you're like, am I not doing better? I know what I need to do, but yes, somehow I just can't get there. This is harder than I thought it would be. And perfectionists, by their very nature, are achievers. They're people that work hard. They're people that are intelligent. They're people, they're just like the rest. We're all the same for the most part in the fact that we all want to do well. We want to do our best. But sometimes our best is like it's so far away, right? And you get it all done productive as you want to be, right? And then there's a lot of instability there too. So maybe you grew up in a home that wasn't as stable as you liked. So you figured out that if you could be perfect, if you could make sure that no conflict happens, that things stay smooth sailing, then things would be okay. You wouldn't have a lot to worry about. You could just be yourself, do what you needed to do, keep people happy. And I know myself, I'm a huge people pleaser. I know that stemmed from childhood, right? Because I didn't like to see people sad. I didn't like to see people upset. I wanted to help people. I wanted to give love. I wanted to give encouragement. But oftentimes it's really difficult to be in that scenario. Oftentimes I was the only person laughing, right? Because I was the type of person, I didn't want to be a person who was constantly sad or mad or frustrated or upset. I wanted to try to help others get through and try to laugh through things that were difficult. Like, because you think about it, heavy emotions are extremely difficult to deal with for a lot of people. And I'm one of those people. I tend to make essentially jokes rather than being frustrated or upset about anything, right? Because that can be really difficult. Also needing control, because if you're able to control the unknown circumstances, life feels safer. Life feels like it's more predictable. And a lot of us would rather have a predictable, boring life than to deal with having the ups and downs, the moods of people that we may not know, strangers maybe who cannot be as nice at times, right? But if we're doing what we need to be doing, then ultimately it should all work out, right? Maybe not. And so for all of that, then you have the moment where it leads to overthinking. It leads to fear of making mistakes. I know at times and over to make sure that I'm actually on the right track, that I'm doing what I need to be doing. And the fear of mistakes can be huge, right? And then you have the idea of the self-criticism coming back again, because ultimately we're all really good at knowing what we're bad at, and we're really good at reminding ourselves how we've screwed up, how we've messed up, right? And so perfectionism is an attempt to avoid feeling something, whether that's a positive emotion, whether that's a negative emotion. Most likely it's feeling out of control. It's feeling like you don't know what you're doing. It's feeling like you're stupid or less than someone else, or less than even who you want to be. And those are very difficult, hard emotions to deal with, right? No one wants to feel bad about themselves, but yet perfectionism daily reminds us that we're not going to get there, right? We're going to do our best. We're going to give our all, but ultimately it's still going to fall short for whatever reason. And let me tell you something. This is really important. You don't need to be perfect to be safe anymore, right? Perfectionism promises that if you're perfect, you'll be safe. But that is a lie. That's why the whole thing is a trap. Now, I'm not saying that I don't still have my perfectionist tendencies. I do, right? I absolutely do. And I feel like it's a really hard thing to try to overcome, especially when you hear people say, well, you did your best. You did your best. I remember growing up in my family would always say, oh, well, you did your best. Yeah, I did my best, but I know I can do better. I want to do better, and it was almost this scenario where they were encouraging me because I had fallen short, and yet I still felt less than, right? So that can be really difficult to manage those emotions. So I guess I will leave you with one final thought. And that will be, you don't need to be perfect to be safe anymore, right? Because ultimately perfectionism doesn't keep you in a bubble or keep you safe. It feels like it does. It feels like it's the answer that you've been waiting for, but ultimately not so much, right? It doesn't really live up to its promises. If overthinking is a promise, right? The other thing is, a lot of us never feel done. We never feel complete. We're always scanning for the next threat. We're always scanning for the next thing that we want to be able to level up with. So, excuse me. In closing, I just want to say thank you all very much for tuning in. I will be back tomorrow with another topic, and I hope that you all got some information out of this video, and I hope that it gave you a little bit of insight, and I hope that you will come back and see me again soon, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in. It means a lot. Have a great day. Bye-bye.